Hi everyone! Welcome to day 9 of 10 days of alternative medicine education sprints. We're almost at the end, and today I am hosting my friend Inbar. She is a sex and relationship coach. She works with couples as well as individuals, helping them find their inner voice and overcome their conflicts. Hi Inbar, welcome.
Hello, how are you, Yael?
I'm good, thanks. Inbar works with her clients to remove all obstacles of shame and guilt, which are usually intertwined with sexuality. Her biggest passion is helping our world to heal from shame and help people celebrate their true color. So, welcome, welcome. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm so honored to be here. Thank you,
Me
Yael.
too, thanks. So, tell me a little bit about your work as a sex and relationship coach.
So I know for some people it sounds super curious and like very tempting, and you probably think that I have sex with my clients, but I don't. That's just as a start. I studied in an institute called Somatic On in Berkeley, California, the training is basically what makes me a different coach than any other coach you'll know is that I help my clients explore intimacy. And the way that we do it is we combine touch, breath, movement, and of course, talk. So we kind of take all the worlds into consideration. The idea of somatica is to experience intimacy because
Mm-hmm.
most people only do intimacy with one person, and most of them have this kind of expectation to just get or accept or have whatever they need, which in true life what happens is that our needs are changing throughout the time, especially after having kids and or just growing up, and we're not the same people as we are when we enter a relationship. So many people have experienced a lot of frustration, especially in marriage. So I guess that my biggest chunk of work is to get people to really get to know their own needs throughout their voices or movement or breath. And we do it either over the phone, like via Skype or Zoom or any other platform, or at my office. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm super passionate about it. My biggest passion is helping people with shame. I experienced that there's a lot of shame, as you said, intertwined into sexuality, with sexuality, and I help people deal with that and kind of reveal the layers of shame to help them be just who they are and just walk
Mm-hmm.
around the world as sexual being.
Yeah,
And that's always exciting.
yeah, we did talk about it a little bit yesterday. I was asking you about, do you think this shame, does it come from a cultural or religious background? Because I know in my background, in my house, we never talked about it. It was kind of, in Judaism, it's always about a woman that has to satisfy her man, and we don't really talk about what the woman needs, right? So, do you feel that with your clients as well?
First of all, I think it's an excellent question, since I do think that culture has a lot to do with the way we feel regarding our sexuality. But it's not just that, it's mainly the family you come from, because
Right.
some families, even if they are, chilonim for Israelis is a term that we're not orthodox in a sense that we don't practice religion so much, but we can still have tons of shame around sexuality because this is a taboo at any culture, I think. Sex is not just something you talk about. People think that it's something that has to come spontaneously and you just have to learn how to do it, I guess, in a way. But as women especially, we carry throughout the generations We were oppressed for so long, and we carry that with us. And only now, recently, maybe in the last, I guess maybe since the 60s, then where hippies started to get like a little more out there, then we started seeing more women owning their sexuality. But if you take 100 years earlier, if you would own your sexuality, you would just get burned. So we have to be very careful with that. But overall, I feel that sexuality is a super complex topic or super complex thing, and most people just don't take the time to understand their own sexuality. And I have to say that that's a shame, because there's so much into sexuality, and sexuality is actually a part of who we are, and there's no reason to hide it or be shameful about it.
Yeah, you told me the other day that when clients come to you with a problem, they want to fix it, but sometimes you have to go deeper down inside, look at the person as a whole in order to cover where this problem actually comes from. So can you elaborate a bit on that, and what is the work you do?
Yeah. Well, sexuality, the way I look at it, is the door. Is just the doorkeeper, you say, for everything else that bubbles up underneath the surface. And intimacy is just a way to get in. But there's sense sexuality, the way that it's structured in each and every one of us is through childhood wounds. So you can't really do sexuality or intimacy work without being super gentle and careful, and also know a little bit about trauma. Because the way that our sexuality is being shaped is through experiences we had that are not necessarily sexual when we were very young. So a lot of it is shadow work, and to get to know your shadow and know what is it that moves you, not necessarily in bed, more than just when you really do intimacy, because intimacy is vulnerability.
That's right.
So when you agree to be vulnerable, even with just a friend of yours, then you create intimacy.
Right.
And being able to carry yourself or express yourself the way you truly are, that's very rare. And that's why for most people, sex is just something you do, like 1, 2, 3, and okay, 10 minutes and we're done. But one of my biggest inspirations is Esther Perel, who's a psychologist. And this is a sentence I always use at any lecture I give or any talk or anything I write almost, is that she has a saying that I love, that sex isn't something you just do, it's a place you go. So where do you want to go? Like, where is it? Is it just going to be like a 10-minute or, like until you reach an orgasm and that's it? Or is it going to be a whole garden that you can cultivate and just enjoy and spend time and be able to stay exposed? And this is, I guess, the relationship part of the coaching, to help people communicate their needs and finding their voice and owning what is it that they want without expecting their partner to just guess what it is. And that's a big part of my work.
Yeah, in my opinion, vulnerability is one of the foundations of every successful relationship. You can't have a successful relationship without being open, without being transparent, without being vulnerable with your partner. So that's a good topic you raised there. So now that brings me to our other topic. What are the top 3 reasons people come to see you?
Well, there are so many. I think that the number one topic would probably be women, mostly women that claims that they have no libido.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what happened to me. I used to be such an animal in bed, and then suddenly I don't feel like having sex at all. What is wrong with me? And I usually get panicked women at my clinic. But usually it's not the case. Like, that's not the reason why they have a low libido. It's just the way, like we
That's
said
just a
earlier, just
symptom. Yeah.
yes, exactly. This is just a symptom, and usually it's very easy to take care of that.
Mm-hmm.
Which most likely it would be an underline of a burden they carry, usually after having kids, or some kind of
Right.
anger towards their partner for losing their glam, even though I think that you always glamorous even after birth. So I guess that this would be probably the most clientele I get are from this area. But then I get other topics. I get a lot of couples,
Mm-hmm.
especially nowadays, that feel that they're super stressed in this quarantine and this situation. So I've
Right.
received many calls lately. So I help them either work through that crisis or work through. Sometimes people really need help to just break up.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
So a lot of them are
breakups are
like,
hard.
yeah. So they reach out usually for a couples coaching to
Mm-hmm.
realize that they need to break up. Some of them don't break up, and we just work on bridging
Mm-hmm.
the conflicts,
Mm-hmm.
And then probably the third reason, also communication skills, but also like in bed, I get a lot of trauma responders. Like sometimes the partner who wants to know how to deal with their other partner's trauma response,
Mm-hmm.
which unfortunately, this is a topic that is very, very difficult to find any information, even online, about how to deal with a person who's being triggered every time they're in bed. And it's also one of my biggest passions, because there's nothing like watching a person overcoming their trauma or just
Right.
kind of hugging it and
Embracing it. Yeah.
yeah.
That's beautiful. That's really, really beautiful. Um, so yeah, back to the first reason you were mentioning about women losing their libido. So you also mentioned it's a lot about self-esteem and self-love,
Yeah.
about that women don't know how to embrace themselves. They don't know, they don't have the self-esteem. They're still beautiful. They're still attractive. So I think yesterday you mentioned something that you work on that aspect as well. Is that right?
Well, I think a lot of it has to also, it's embedded in our culture for many, 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 many years, in our history, to shut down our true voices. And I think that the main thing we see with women, especially, is that it's very hard for us to own our sexuality as if it was a sin, or as if it was like something that was totally shameful or unallowed. And even as a society today, it's not something that's super common or acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
And if you take a look at it from a religion perspective, then it's totally a taboo. And a woman should be dressed up and covered up and shouldn't be
Mm-hmm.
tempting at all to anybody. And in many religions, this is how they treat women. But I
Still
think that
is.
this is,
Yeah,
yeah, it's
unfortunately.
totally is. We both grew up in Israel, so we both know how that is. But it's also in the Muslim community and in the
Right.
Christian community. When you are very religious, then this aspect of sexuality has to be controlled, so called.
Mm-hmm.
And I think nowadays, actually, I'm aware of this program that this rabbi is doing with teaching um, women how to ask for what they really want and how to do intimacy in a
Hmm.
way that preserves the passion.
That's
um,
interesting.
it
That
is, and
it's
it's a
finally opened
growing
up to
thing.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
So there is hope. There is hope. to the
Yes,
world, you
yes,
know?
always. And the more we talk about it, the more we open it up, the more people will start embracing it more and don't feel ashamed about it.
Yes.
Um, so yeah, my last question for the day will be maybe you can share one success story that you just recently had with one of your clients.
So this is a success story that I have, is something I carry with me since the beginning I started my work. And this was actually my first client who came to me with the first problem that I just told you about, with the low libido. She actually was saying she has no libido. She was single back then. I have a drawing of her. She's an artist right here in my office, which I'm not going to show just as a respect of her own privacy.
For sure.
But she was my guinea pig, and we worked together for almost a year. And she's amazing and super dear to my heart. And we did a lot of trauma work. When she
Hmm.
first came, it wasn't about trauma at all. It was actually about her not wanting to have intimacy with anyone, and yet wants to have a relationship because she's in her 30s and really would love to have a family. And then the moment we opened the door, we realized that there was so much trauma that was actually bothering her from even um, trying even to engage in any intimate connection at all.
Hmm.
And it was very delicate and very slow work, and it took fairly almost a year to actually overcome the whole thing. And throughout her process, I went and studied NLP and timeline therapy, which is a way to basically um, change or reframe the memories as we remember them. So if you have a trauma that kind of takes over all your memories, and then you have that post-trauma that goes with you, so timeline therapy can have tons of tools to basically go back and change that memory.
That's
So for
interesting. We
her,
should have a different talk about it for sure.
we can, and actually I love that tool, even though it's super analytical compared to the somatica work, which is more, I would say, maybe spiritual or um,
Oh,
different, you know,
okay.
just more deeper. And this is
Mhm.
more of just a very structured way to get rid of memories and old beliefs and things that just are hard for you to deal with on a daily basis. And when she came in, it was, I didn't even notice that. But then the more we worked, I realized, okay, there's a lot of trauma and we have to work on that.
Mhm.
And after studying that, it was amazing to see her shift and what happened to her in the office. And for me, she's like a pillar or like this light, you know, for this whole work. And every time I get new clients, I think of her and how much work she did over the course of our 1 year. And she's
Mhm.
super important to me. You know, she reminds me why is it that I do what I do. And she recently got engaged, so this is like
Ah,
super exciting for me. And
congratulations. Yeah, I
yes.
understand it's a deep work and it's a slow process, but are there cases where you can see a quicker result, a
Oh,
quicker
totally.
resolution?
Well, you know what? I can actually give the audience right now, to whoever is listening, an amazing tool to use. And
Yes,
to some people,
please.
they need to see me, but to some, they just need to hear that sentence. That one sentence that can change your life, right?
For sure.
Sometimes you can
Share
only, okay, so I'll share it. It's communication is lubrication. So we
it.
all have fantasies, right? We all have stuff we would really wish he would move his hand a little bit to the right, a little bit to the left. Oh, I wish he would do this to me, and then I would be so into him. Or as men, like we want to ask, but we don't feel like asking. And as women, we kind of face the same thing. And I always tell my clients, just try and share one thing. It's that one thing that can change your the way you do intimacy in 180 degrees. So
Mm-hmm.
just to like take a deep breath and talk about it, because the
Right.
worst thing that can happen is that you're going to get really lubricated and you're going to have a lot of good communication thanks to it. So,
I love it. That's a brilliant idea. Thanks for sharing. So,
mm.
before we wrap up, anything else you would like to share or add?
Well, as I said, my biggest thing is shame. And I want to say something about shame also as a just as a tip, I guess, for anyone who listens, is that shame only lives in the dark. It cannot live in the light, and it needs a very closed, dark uh, place inside of you. But then the moment you open maybe just a little bit, and share even just a little bit with one friend, with one person, with one coach or a therapist, and you shed a little bit of light over that shame, you see that immediately it minimizes. And even though shame work can take with some clients years of trial and years of actually expressing the shame and sitting down with this,
Mm-hmm.
um, sometimes it only takes one session of let's talk about shame. And then shame no longer exists. It's no longer as big as it was. It's no longer a monster as it was living inside of you. So do yourself a favor and share, even with one person, would make a huge difference. And of course, I invite you to call me or reach out, even anonymously, if you
Yeah,
need.
I'll share your details, your contact details in the comments. So, thank you so much. It was very valuable information and very uh, important topic that, as you said, not many people are ready to talk about it. So I hope even this one video will help some of the people who are watching to
Thank
get more open, more communicative, more vulnerable with their partner. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. And
Thank you, Yaeli.
take
Thank you. And
care.
again, thank you for inviting me and for giving me the space to talk about what I do and what I love.
It was my pleasure. Thanks, Inbar. Bye bye.
Bye.